Disaster Management Agency as we are into the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. I have joining us virtually is the Public Relations Officer of NaDMA, Oslyn, Crosby. Good morning, Miss Crosby.
Good morning, Blossom. Good morning to all your listeners, viewers. I know that with virtual, then of course we get to reach so much more people, which to me is an advantage because we get to share the message of disaster management far and wide.
I agree. Thank you once again for joining us this morning. Let's get right into it with the hurricane season officially underway. We're just over a month into the season. One of the things that I wanted to ask about was, before we get into the shelters, as a matter of fact, let's get into the latest planning coming out of NaDMA. What's the latest developments that the organization has put in place as we are into the hurricane season?
Well, Blossom, with this season happening every year, then you know that having a checklist and just keeping to it, of course, is an advantage here. It's not like the unplanned hazards that it's a challenge for us to respond to. But with this year being the new normal, then it would have presented its own challenges. But in addition to that, I think what it would have also done for us is give us a head start, because as we prepared for COVID, it meant that we were also preparing for the season in the meantime. So it was 2 in 1. What have we done so far? On the 30th of May, we would have done an exercise where we were testing our communication, and that was with St. Vincent. So that we would have done then. We're now into July. Some of the, once you do an exercise, it is to test, assess, and then from there, if there's any little things that you need to do, then you would correct. Last week, we had some of our key personnel, NTRC, NaDMA, and also we have our volunteers in the amateur radio community that assist us. So we're ensuring that everything is ready. So last week we had that project up at the office where we had them just ensuring that all our communication equipment is up and running on par and of course ready, because we know that we've already tested, so we know what our reach is like. And of course, and that is the time that you ensure, because we're still very early into the season. So far, yes, we know that it would have created another challenge, but in addition to that, I think we can still say that we are grateful for the dust is negative and positive for us. It is working both ways for us, according to the officials from Met, because we have it. While yes, it is raising up all the respiratory issues and the people who do have those challenges or suffer with these challenges. But in addition to it, it is keeping down the development, of course, of our systems. Will that always be the case? We know that that is not the case. But when we have the time, we will enjoy that little time that we have. And what we want to do is use this as an opportunity to remind the general public that with this little vacation that we appear to be having, that we use it. If we think that we're still delayed in our preparation for the season, that we use that time to do so. Please do so. And in addition to that, what we have also been doing was also, we had sent out a call for volunteers earlier on this year, engaging and orienting our volunteers. We would have had 2 meetings with them so far, virtually, that is, ensure that they're ready. The participation so far has been very well received. People have been showing interest, a lot of interest. Last week, they had an opportunity to ask questions on the documents or just the structure of NaDMA, what we do, how we do it, why we do it. So if you're not clear, that you get to ask questions, because we know that when we are activated, we cannot do those things. So we're using the time now to ensure that we're ready, everyone. In addition to that, we also had a virtual training session for 5 weeks with our existing district structures. You know that we have 17 districts throughout the island, serving in various capacities, all in the disaster management framework. That workshop was facilitated by Ms. Samantha Dixon, former coordinator at NaDMA, so now president of Red Cross. She would have facilitated that session. And one of the focus of that those training sessions was to expose our existing members to the new normal. It is not normal. Things are different now, Blossom. We have to ensure that people are apprised as to where we are at, what is expected of you in this time, because at the end of the day, in the midst of the COVID pandemic, while yes, we cannot stop this season or we cannot stop the pandemic, there are things that we can do to minimize the spread and still ensure that we achieve our mandate in disaster management, which is to ensure that people are safe at all times and that we can protect lives, property, and also livelihoods. And that 5-week session, well received. We had on average about 70 participants every week. And I must highlight this. The virtual sessions are really coming true for us. One of the challenges that we have had over the years in disaster management, it is not just here in Grenada. It happens all over. Blossom, people would respond more to trainings or sessions, awareness, public awareness sessions that you would organize only when there's a disaster pending or there's one that will be affecting us, that you feel threatened and you tend to think you're looking for a reason to respond. And it is one of the things that we also saw, that I also saw and experienced in the US when, as part of that training last year. But what we're seeing now with the pandemic, 1, and 2, the virtual platform that is now available for us to be able to reach people, that we have more cooperation and, of course, involvement of people in the process. And we really want to say that is, for us, one of the positives of COVID-19. And, of course, that reality check, the things that we see from time to time in all the movies and so on, how the world may turn to be in this technological era, that I think COVID has started it, and our people are really grabbing onto it. What we are grateful for, though, is that it is working to our advantage in disaster management, where we get to reach people and share the message, because we can plan, we can prepare, we can test. If we don't have the support of the public, at the end of the day, it goes to what? Then we don't get to achieve our real mandate here. So we are grateful for this. So all of that we have been doing. And then, of course, still, we have coming up this week our annual stakeholders forum. It is where we get to meet we get to bring the private and public sector together and share the message of disaster management. Not just share, but also get from them. In all that we do at NaDMA, if we don't have the support of the private sector, because, and that's the reason why we have those MOUs and so that we have existing, nor the public sector, we cannot work. We cannot work. And it goes back a lot to the reason why we would have sent out that call for volunteers. So this year, on the 8th and 9th, which is on Wednesday and Thursday of this week, we will be hosting our annual stakeholders Hurricane Readiness Forum and Consultation. It will be virtual again. And it will be under the theme, it will be observed under the theme, adopting and embracing the new normal while maintaining disaster resilience. And it's going to be half day on those 2 days, with an overall objective of bringing together the private and public sector, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders to present on the status of hurricane readiness for this year. And it is one of the things in this pandemic that presents a unique opportunity for us. We cannot just say that we're up and that we're ready for the season. Everything at this point, all plans, all programs, have to be reviewed to ensure that we adopt and we live up to the protocols and regulations that exist for COVID-19. And Blossom, I think before we went into what I would call the core of our discussion this morning, we did speak to what are some of the expectations going into shelters. And I know that we're going to get to shortly. So that is one of the things and you would realize that almost everything that's done this year will be done keeping that in mind, that everything have to be reviewed. We now must tailor it to ensure that we take into account COVID-19. In addition to that, we also have our primary school quiz. We're into the last week now, where we're wrapping it up, and the young ones have been very cooperative. Blossom, being at home, I think it is one of the times that we would have learned, when you hear the little ones those 5 and on, they're telling you that they miss school and they want to go back. Something is happening, right?
I agree.
It is not normal times. So when you recognize that with the quiz, they have been looking for something just outside of what they've been doing for the past couple of months, just inside. They go out only on special occasions. They don't get to go out much now, and they have been calling in. And it was the intention of the quiz, where we get to still share and look to achieve the objective of the quiz, which was to get the message of disaster management to our young minds. But with COVID-19 and using the airwaves to do it, it means that we're not just getting to the young ones, we're also getting to the adults also at the same time. So many, many positives for us this year. And in addition to that, we realize that Blossom, as I say, when you're in the kitchen, you feel heat, then you know what to, you always try to ensure that you remain safe. The pandemic would have heightened our awareness on disasters, disaster management, and the importance of one's individual responsibility in safety. We know now, right? Even though sometimes, yes, some may be complacent, some you would always get that percentage. But I think it is safe to say that the majority of us, we are better prepared now than we have ever been in the hurricane season in the past. When we were on lockdown, and we went to the supermarket, Blossom, especially when we had those 3 days of shopping, or we had this day today, we wasn't sure when the next day would be. When we go to the supermarket, I am sure as daylight that most of us have an emergency backup because of what would have happened during the COVID period. So it is working to the advantage of many now. Some people were of the opinion electricity may go. I mean, water, we have extra buckets inside, I'm sure. We have the flashlights, and so they have batteries. So this year, I believe it is safe to say that due to COVID-19, that we are better prepared, much better prepared than we would have been in the past, when we would always make that famous statement, that God is a Grenadian. It's been years we have had one, yes? But we know that it is forecasted to be an overactive season, so we don't want complacency, as it can result in the loss of lives. And I don't think, Blossom, we don't have lives to lose. COVID, so far, have not taken any, and I think we need to be grateful for this, and not allow the season, the hurricane season that it's a friend of ours, I think, because we have to meet it every year, allow it to do that to us. We have been doing well so far, and I want us to continue to do so. So this year for the season, we have predicted an overactive one, but in addition to that, we are seeing numbers named storms 13 to 19, hurricanes 6 to 10, and major hurricanes 3 to 6. That's a lot. And the season so far has not been, I don't think it is showing any signs of cooling down. My last conversation with our experts at the Met Office is that very soon, from what the forecasters, the people who advise our Met services are saying, is that they believe that very soon, when the dust start going down, that the rain that we're supposed to be getting during the season will start stepping in. And we know that we do have, and this one is not to let anyone panic, we do have a wave outside from the outlook on the weekend, expected to affect us sometime tonight into tomorrow. So be on guard, be safe. Let us ensure that if we know we're living in low-lying areas, that we do what we need to do to stay safe. Remember, information that is shared on the weather systems are not geared to make you panic, but rather for you to be better prepared.
With everything else, one of the adjustments are more preparation, I know, went into the preparation of the shelters, like you alluded to, with the protocol, social distancing, number of people that can be in one space at a time. How has that adjusted the planning when it comes to the shelters and those that have been allocated and the protocols that are put in place?
All right. So, Blossom, it is an area, and I know it is one of the areas of concern for the public, because if anything were to happen, and your dwelling place becomes compromised in any way, or you believe it is compromised, then you need to go to what we would consider a haven, the safest of places, then we know shelters would be the next option. In Grenada, we have not hurricane shelters, but we have emergency shelters. So our shelters are for everything. In the case of a tsunami, an earthquake, the hurricane season, even COVID. If it so happens that, for example, we have a number of people that's quarantined, that kind of thing. If we get to the point where we need to isolate Blossom and we have to get to that point, maybe your emergency shelters may come into play, right? If we get to the stage where we have to move one family member or two family members in a family, may be affected and others are not, what do we do with the others? And that's why they call emergency shelters. So all the hazards that have the potential of affecting us, once needs be, then they will be activated. What are some of the changes that we had to recommend for this year's hurricane season, unlike the past, due to COVID-19? The first one that you must do, just as how it applies to everybody else, having to go into business places and so on, having to be sanitized, it applies for us. But one of the highlights of our shelter management, managing our shelters and ensuring that they're safe and they continue to be a safe haven, is that in every shelter, every emergency shelter in Grenada now, we would have identified isolation rooms. Why? Blossom, we all know that with the dust and everything else, the question of allergies and the sneezing and so would pop up. And nowadays we know with COVID, we all have to be afraid to sneeze and cough outside.
Even me alone inside here, afraid to sneeze by myself.
You're afraid? I know. The minute you hold that nose, somebody thinks something's coming and there's a reason for them to be concerned. And it is the mental awareness. So with that, in every shelter, so we have isolation rooms. What do we do there? So you enter the shelter and you're exhibiting signs of sneezing, coughing, the flu-like symptoms, you will be isolated. Because remember, while our shelter management team, the people who would run the shelters, yes, we're there as part of the disaster management process, we are not doctors. They are not doctors or volunteers, be it our churches that run the facility or our volunteers within the area, they are not doctors. And that is the reason why the screening process is critical. So you were to enter the shelter, exhibiting any symptoms, you will be screened. And of course, you know that it happens with everybody. It's going to happen with everybody. Just as I remember I went to one of the business places in town and my temperature was taken upon entering the building. So the sanitization process will happen and you will be screened. If you're exhibiting flu-like symptoms, then you would be entitled to further screening, because we need to ensure that we don't create any clusters of the virus, if that's the case here. So all the necessary protocols that applies to every business place in Grenada applies to our shelters. And you know that shelters also come with its unique challenge, because Blossom, something were to go wrong, God forbid, we do get a system this year and our homes are compromised, be it one on par with that of Ivan years ago, or just a system to affect us. With all that's happening now, the challenge would pop up as to how many people we would house at the shelters and how do you keep yourself safe. It's going to be a situation similar to that of what's happening with our busmen now, right? Public transportation had to come back out on the road. What we had to do was sit down and write protocols that would ensure that while everybody, yes, can earn and can work, that we still have to ensure that the public is safe. So you would be required to wear your mask. We're asking and we continue to plead to our families, especially with children and the elderly, or pregnant women, or vulnerable groups, please sit down and have the discussion now with your family. The children should know that it is not business as usual. So yes, you're going to see another challenge and you want to play. But what are some of the safety tips? What are some of the safety measures that you want to implement at home? Because while, yes, the shelter will have the rules, right? There are do's and don'ts for the shelters. As individuals, we do more when it comes. A lot of us are a lot more sensitive to the issue of safety and sanitization, unlike others. And in order for you to feel as comfortable as possible, the infrastructure will be there. The people will be there to assist you, but comfort will be dependent on you. How will you feel most comfortable? Do you think it is best that you give your children or you use gloves? And if you choose to do so, what are some of the safety tips? What are some of the safety measures that you will employ, even though you're using gloves? Because we know that if not used properly, it can be of more harm than good to you. Always remember, and it is where the reminder always comes in, that safety is an individual's responsibility. Yes, all the measures will be put in place, but with your input, it means that all that is done to ensure others are safe, that it will be reinforced, further enforced by you. And at the end of the day, we have a safer community. If we all do our part, we will be better at what we do and how we do it. So on the 14th to the 16th of this month of July, we will be engaging our volunteers and our district people who are a part of the shelter management teams in training sessions. It will be virtual again. It will be virtual again. So we will be doing this with them. And it's for all the people who work within the shelter management committees. Blossom, I think what I need to further explain is that within the NaDMA framework, when we asked for volunteers, we ask you to volunteer in the areas that we know we will need people in, or all the areas. And that's relief management, shelter management. We also have public education and awareness. We have communication. We have people who we would definitely need in the kitchen. We would need runners. We need drivers. We need people that would just be there. You might simply need people to just usher people, ensure that people are comfortable. So the people who would have shown interest in the shelter management area, from that database, from the volunteers, the call from volunteers that was sent out, we will be targeting all the people within that shelter management, that area of shelter management, that interest shelter management, and we will be preparing them. In disaster management, Blossom in the media, we were thrown in the ocean. We know about that. If you love it, if when you're thrown there, you realize that the water is too cold and you're going to just go down, then you're dead. But if you like it, then we swim. We start trying to make an effort. Disaster management, we cannot do that. We must prepare you. We must prepare you because it is not about you. Disaster management is all about service to humanity. So you always think of others, not yourself. All you are is basically a conduit to service. You're working for the people. And that is what disaster management, it is heavy, it is focused heavily on humanity. Your service to others. And we have to prepare you. So our shelters, shelter managers, shelter teams will be working, and you're looking at least and how will we do it in the midst of the COVID framework? Because again, you still don't want the overpopulated areas, even though you're doing training, because this training will be virtual, but also a practical aspect would also have to be involved. So how will we do it? The virtual part, of course, is the easiest because everybody gets to do it in their own space. The practical part, how will we do it? We will go by districts. So every district, I said we had 17 districts. Every district will do them on their own. So for the town of St. George, it will be done up at NaDMA, but we would have only a group of 5. Only a group of 5 at a time. So then that way, we get to do 5 people for 2 hours. And then we get to end that session in 2 hours, and then we get to take another 5 people for another 2 hours. And that is to ensure that we can maintain social distancing, that of course people know that you have to wear your mask, that you would have to be sanitized upon entry at the agency, as we do have the protocol fully enforced at the agency, and to ensure that at the end of the day, that people are prepared, despite COVID-19, that if anything were to happen, if we were to be affected by a system, that we are ready. So I hope now that we have gotten to allay a lot of the fears. I know a lot of people have been very concerned, and we still have a number of people that's coming forward wanting to volunteer. We will be engaging all. We have been doing it in a phased approach because we know we must do it. We must do it. We have been doing so. So I know that all the people who would have signed up, we would have engaged you. We would have engaged our volunteers twice already since their interest. They would have expressed interest in wanting to serve. We would have done an orientation meeting with them, and then they had one again last week. We were planning to do one this week, but that would not happen because we have the stakeholders consultation on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. So the following week, we will be engaging, and then we have a series of trainings that we will be ensuring that all undergo in preparation for you to serve. In addition to that, we know that when everybody's speaking of volunteers, then people ask, so what do I have to get from it? In disaster management, you have a lot to get from volunteering. The service, when we spoke to serving humanity and ensuring that you're ready in order for you to work, life skills, that's one of the key things that disaster management gives us, life skills. Blossom, you can be standing on the bus terminal and something goes wrong, somebody's in distress, and you might have just been a part of first aid training because you volunteered in disaster management, and you might just save somebody's life, and not just a stranger, It can happen at home also. So you get to learn skills that will take you throughout your lifetime, where you get to help others. But in the process, you also get to help yourself, because information empowers. It makes us different people. In addition to that, it would make you a lot more aware as an individual when it comes to the hazards that are around you, what can affect you, how much it can affect you, and what you can do to ensure that it doesn't happen again. It has done it for me over time, and I'm sure it'll do a lot more for you as an individual. When you enter a building, the first thing you think of is, where are the exits? What's the fire exit? Where the staircase? In the case of an elevator, it's an elevated building. How do I get out if something were to go wrong? If I'm standing here now and there's an earthquake, what do I do? As parents, that's the thoughts that we should inculcate in our children, because remember, we are not always around them. And it is always my concern as a parent. I am at work and you're at school, or you may be by your grandmother and I am at work. So we're totally different places. Each and every one should know what they should do if this hazard were to affect us, because it will determine life or death. And that is a short space of time. What are you going to do? Pick up the phone and call? No. It does not work that way all the time. And we know most of the times it's when communication fails us. So prepare before. When it happens, you're ready.
How can I become a volunteer? What is required if I want to, become a volunteer, or at least maybe just learn basic first aid through NaDMA? What's the criteria or the requirement for me to do that?
What we have done.
On mute, right. Mm-hmm.
They would come, they would make a request. Most of them would make a request. So you ask the businesses, because one of the things that we recognize is our business community is ensuring that they are ready, and not just them, but also their staff. So they would request it. Most businesses would request it. So they organize the session, they let their staff know what's happening, and they may do what? An hour beat the presentation or so. And that has to do with the safety aspect. People acquiring the skill. I remember just before COVID-19 actually got really, really serious, got really bad, we had a number for a couple of weeks. Well, Mr. McIntyre would have facilitated these students of the New Life organization teaching them those things, the first aid, what you should do if somebody's in distress, the person is lying on the ground, there's an accident. Because if you remember last year, there was an accident on the western side with a number of students from New Life Organization. And it would have involved some of those things. If somebody's injured, how do you band? What do? You don't have the emergency supplies around you. To use, that you will be able to use, and it will be able to help someone in need. And so that is one of the things. Send an email, send a request. You have interest, send a request to the office, NaDMA@spiceisle.com. Ms. Phillip will respond. And in addition to that, to become a volunteer, how do you become a volunteer? When we sent out the call, most people would have just sent me back a message, Oslyn, I want to volunteer. I have interest in volunteering. You can do so. You can send us a message on the Facebook page. We will receive it. You can call. You can call us at the office 440-8390, and that can go up to 94. So 8390-91-234-440. Or so an email, call, Facebook page. But when you're doing, you're sending your name, your address, your telephone number, your email address, and your area of interest. Indicate the area that you would want to serve in. You will be added to the database, and whenever we engage our volunteers, you will receive information. You will receive a phone call, and you will also receive the invitation. Because now with COVID-19, virtual is what we're doing a lot of. And of course, from virtual, then you would know how we would facilitate the practical sessions in some cases that would need to happen. So that is how you can be a volunteer. Just send us that information. Name, address, email address, telephone number, and your area of interest. You will be added. There is no way we're turning anyone away, because at the end of the day, 13 people at the Secretariat cannot mount a successful response to a system or being affected by a hazard. It takes a lot more hands on deck to make it happen. And that's the reason why we would have encouraged a number of people over the years would have received training on the NaDMA. Some people have gotten training in shelter, relief management, that kind of thing. When you have to serve, you need hands to make sure that it can happen.
On that note, Oslyn, let's take a break. We are speaking with the Public Relations Office of the National Disaster Management Agency, Oslyn Crosby, as we are into the second month of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. Let's pay some bills and then we'll come back and continue the discussion. This is To The Point on Classic, GBN and Hot 98.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Coughs and sneezes spread diseases. So cover coughs and sneezes, please. Not with a rag or bandana. They trap germs. When you use the rag again, you put germs on your hands and everything else you touch. When you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth and nose with tissue. Throw the tissue in a bin and wash your hands afterwards. If you don't have a tissue, cough into your sleeve or elbow. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers are also effective in cleaning hands.
Wait to see my granddaughter.
Feel good facts.
Avoid the most common causes of spreading the flu. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue, dispose of it straight away, and either wash your hands or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer.
Welcome back to the Point, speaking with Public Relations Officer of the National Disaster Management Agency, Oslyn Crosby, as we are into the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. At this point in the program, we're going to open the floor for members of our viewing and listening public who may have questions as it relates to disaster management, specifically the hurricane season. You can call us on the landline 435-2041. You can also message us on the WhatsApp. It's also 435-2041, but please only written messages on the WhatsApp. You can also pose your comments, questions, queries, concerns on the GBN Television Facebook page and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Let's go to the phone line. Good morning.
Hi, morning. How are you doing? And to your guests. Ms. Crosby, it is one thing to come on radio, or maybe say television, to I'm listening on radio, and to paint a fine picture of how interesting it could be to be a volunteer to work along with NaDMA. I was not here, for example, during the 2 hurricanes that passed. Since coming back to Grenada, I went and volunteered when a meeting was called in my area, in St. Patrick's area. I went up there in the meeting. It so happened that morning, the head of NaDMA was on our radio. And he made a set of statements, and I queried and criticized. That meeting was to be held the evening it was held. I was there, he was there. While he was coming in, I was talking to the head of NaDMA in the area. And he overheard me, because I was even repeating what happened in the morning. When I went into that building, which is a headquarters here, I saw almost nothing that relates to management of disaster. In case an incident were to happen and that office were to respond to what is going on in the village and in the parish of St. Patrick's, there was almost nothing inside it to relate to dealing with people in such a situation as would turn out in a disaster. This place is filled with computers. A whole set of computers inside there on desk and so on. What on earth they are there for, I don't know. And nobody seems to understand. The storeroom that is supposed to be ready for things to deal with disaster preparedness was virtually empty. So I don't know what or not you all are expecting people to do in volunteering in dealing with a disaster. If something were to happen, people's houses would be smashed. There would be a lot of old people who would be disenfranchised or put out of commission, you might say, and you might have to go and help them. There's no means and available implements and equipments and so on.
Thank you.
Infrastructure, such things to deal with such a thing. So how people are in volunteering going to be able to help?
Thank you very much, caller. Ms. Crosby?
Yes, it's an interesting comment. One, and I believe from what you would have said, you're speaking of the River Sally district office. It is one of our DOC, our district operating offices. And yes, sir, that is what you will see at an operating center. The River Sally Center, which was one of the U.S. one of the U.S.'s project here in Grenada, what you see at a DOC will be that setup, computers, because Blossom, and you were to go in, there's a difference between a DOC and a shelter. The shelter management or shelter or emergency shelters will be a place like a school. One of our schools, so I think St. Patrick's Anglican is one of our shelters on that side. There, we are prepared to house people. So it's going to be an open space. At our DOC, which is what I believe you're speaking to, since you're speaking to the computers on the desk and the storeroom, because that is your coordinating center for the northern part of the island. What do you get at a DOC? Who do you see at the DOC? You would get a representative from the police there, so security. You would get a representative, the shelter coordinator assigned under the district committee will be there, right? The medical people, there will be a medical rep there, and that person is going to be assigned from the Ministry of Health. So all the computers, that is an operating center. It looks similar to that of what you would see on the national level, which is up at the conference room up in NaDMA. When we are responding to an event, when something were to happen, so for example, in the past, when we have had systems that are pending or about to affect us, on the desk up in NaDMA in the conference room, on the walls, you would see all the tracking maps. On the tables, you would see the names of every committee: foreign affairs, communication, works, health, all the areas, shelter management, relief operation management, all these people will be represented there. And that is the reason why you saw the computers in there, because it is the coordinating, the district operating and coordinating unit. So when you get directives from the national arm, which is up at Fort Frederick, they will be the ones sending, and that is one of the core responsibilities of our district, to ensure that we have a feel, we know what is happening on the ground, and that information is relayed back to the office. They act only on information, of course, that is shared, or instructions that is shared from the top, because remember, that is the reason why there's a disaster coordinator up at Fort Frederick. Mr. McIntyre, as a disaster coordinator, cannot be everywhere. So the district is our heirs. And of course, they relay information. From there, we would know that, so the health center, the person who is in charge of health services at that operating center will say, well, there are 3 people affected in St. Patrick. Minor injuries, major injuries, what do we do? Police, if there's a breach in security, can say that all those information. So that's the reason why the setup you saw, the operating center, would not be the setup at a shelter. And our warehouse, our main warehouse is down at SSU camp. In addition to that, when we speak to plans and preparations for the season, we always speak to people ensuring that you have your emergency kit. Yes, at the shelters, we will be prepared to take care, but we always say to ensure that you walk, and that's why you have an emergency kit, and we encourage you to do so. Because here's what we're going to do. We will have, and the things that we need, we have them down at the warehouse, the cutlasses, and all the things that we know we will need to respond. We have a warehouse up at Fort Frederick too, where we are prepared. And to the caller, And that is what you need. These are some of the things that's important that we explain in this process. We would take a warehouse and we would fill it up with things. At the end of the day, they will have expiration date. Blossom, it so happened for the last one. Ivan passed in 2004. That's the last is no. Emily was the last one we had in 2005. It's 2020. It's 15 years, right? We have not had any major activation or affected by a system. Then what do we do with these items? We are prepared. There are all the things that we will need. And let us not get into the nitty-gritties. But if you have wind blowing, you need to clear the roads. We can facilitate those. The things that we know we will need, they are there. We have them there. Yes, to you, there's an empty warehouse. The warehouse is not empty. NaDMA do have a backup. We have it, Fort Frederick and down at SSU camp. And to the caller, we are grateful that you would have volunteered, and we are encouraging you to still continue to do so, because we know that you have a contribution to make. You will be able to share, and you would be able to give back to the people, not just in your community, but also to Grenada. And we are grateful, and we want to invite you again to please come back and volunteer, as there are more. And it's important that we understand the role of the different people and the different buildings, the different infrastructure that we have within the system, why they are that way, and not the way that we think it should be.
All right, back to the phone line. Good morning.
Good morning, Blossom. Good morning, Ms. Crosby. Over the years, the shelters have always been ill-equipped. What is NaDMA doing towards ensuring that, because of the COVID situation, things are put in place to ensure that the protocols are observed? I'm making this point based on some of the shelters are churches, and some of the churches have no water tank. Some have inadequate toilet facilities and other amenities that are lacking. I'm happy to hear that you have a warehouse. Is it possible that some of the amenities as water tank and so on, we really expect NaDMA to do the refitting and so on for churches, but is it possible that the water tank or some other facilities as toilets can be placed temporarily for the hurricane season and maybe removed after, so that people who come to the shelters are properly cared for, because everyone is vulnerable in there?
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller, for the comment. Yes. And the process to getting to that place started in 2018. Yes, in 2018. 2019. When we had this project with NAWASA that was funded by NaDMA, where we were ensuring that our shelters, we started with our schools. The intention was to get it to all our shelters, which will include our churches. Our churches are represented on the NaDMA, on the NEA committee, which is the advisory body, because our churches, some of our churches are shelters. For example, the Adventist community is one of the churches that we know we have ADRA represented on the NEA committee. What we would have done, as I said, started that process in 2019, where 1,000-gallon tanks were placed at schools. So now our schools, the majority, we had 17 schools receiving tanks under that program. We had schools that were not identified at the starting of the program to have gotten tanks. And then, of course, once the program starts and one of the schools recognized that, but we need one, it was installed. So Green Street, I remember, Happy Hill Secondary, some of our biggest schools would have gotten 2 of the tanks. Happy Hill Secondary, I remember, got 2 of the tanks. So yes, caller, we are working towards that and ensuring that, because we know that this is critical, it is very, very important that our shelters are adequately prepared for this. And it was with this in mind that NaDMA would have approved that project when it was done through NAWASA, which is also one of our stakeholders, in 2019, and tanks were installed in our schools. And it was not just our primary, secondary, also preschools would have gotten tanks. So yes, we are very, very grateful for that comment, and we are working towards it. And of course, now the conversation would have to go to how we can collaborate with our churches. And I know it has already started to ensure that the backup, the toilet facilities for now, we know that the infrastructure, to make infrastructural changes to anything is always a challenge because that one takes more. But in addition to that, we also would have worked on the toilet facilities part when we did that program, also in conjunction with NaDMA, when we had additional toilet facilities installed in schools like St. John's Christian Secondary last year. When we did that, and taking into account our vulnerable groups, these toilet facilities was done in conjunction with, the Grenada, that's Miss Gabriel and her team, the Coalition for People Living with Disability. When it was done there, we had one done in Dover, so Caracal would have gotten one. We had St. John's Christian Secondary also getting under that. So now it means that we are ensuring that we prepare. We may not be able to do it all at the same time, but the bigger plan to ensure that we get there, it's already in action, and we are grateful for the comment. We are doing it bit by bit. We will get there where we would have them all properly prepared, where we can say that we can accommodate our vulnerable groups, we can accommodate a lot more families, and that we have all the backup systems, and we are working towards it. But the process have already started, and we are grateful for the comment in ensuring that we complete the task at hand.
A Facebook comment, Miss, you speak about shelters in glowing terms. The shelter in my community, Birch Grove RC, is infested with termites, especially the roof. The walls are cracked, etc. So I guess the question would be, what efforts are being made to ensure that our shelters are up to standard to facilitate members of the public in the event that there's an emergency?
All right, so we would have gone through our annual inspection of our shelters. Yes, Birch Grove would have been one of those. What we are also working on now, and if COVID did not stop this, it would have already been implemented. We have an upgrade to do of some of our shelters. So we know that there are existing issues. In the past, we'd have seen from the reports, electricals, some of the other things, and we have been working at them because, and the way it comes in even better is that, remember, our schools, most of our schools are shelters, our community centers, some of our churches. With those identified, and this year we had the volunteers of the members of the civil engineering group here in Grenada. So they would have formed part of the team that inspected our shelters this year. So the report from this year will be different. And we are looking forward to seeing how we can use that volunteer, that very, very critical and important volunteer service this year that was given to us by our local experts, right? As to how we can now tailor, create a plan, and of course go through again. I know that we have one already approved, not implemented because of COVID, because of course COVID would have delayed a lot, as to how we can upgrade and help ensure that we fix some of the issues in our shelters. What we may do, remember we are still awaiting the publishing or the release of the shelters list for this year. It was late. Because of COVID, we started late. It is normally started since February. We had to wait and it was delayed, but it will be out before the end of July. We will be sharing that list. And from it, then we know that the list I would see is not the list that is published. What we would see is the shelters, the areas of concern, and of course, what are some of the plans that what are some of the things that we can do to ensure that we correct the issues within the shelters, because we cannot take you out of your home. That may be damaged or destroyed and bring you in a place that isn't comfortable.
All right. As we wrap up this morning, any final words when the list would be revealed and so on for the shelters and so on?
Yes. I would stay away from doing a date. But what I will tell you is the report was already sent to Cabinet because it must be ratified by the cabinet before we can share it to the public. The inspection process is already completed. That is complete. The report was done, and shelters it's in charge. Well, the ministry in charge of it is the Ministry of Education. So I know that the report was sent up to cabinet. Of course, once agreed, once we get the approval of cabinet, then it will be shared to the public. But it will be done before the end of July.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crosby, for speaking with us this morning. Appreciate your time. And keep us updated as to what's happening with NaDMA as we get further into the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Blossom, for allowing me to share this morning.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
That was Public Relations Officer of the National Disaster Management Agency, Oslyn Crosby, giving us an update as we get into the second month of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. We thank her once again. That's the end of the program and the end of my time with you for today. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have yourselves a productive Monday. And as I said this morning, I'll repeat, let good sense prevail in all things. Have yourselves a good Monday.